Welcome to Celebrate the Gray. My name is Steve Wagner. If you choose to spend the time with me over the next 7 or 8 weeks, I'll be taking you on a little journey of a change of thinking, a change of processing the world around me that has been brewing for a number of years. If you've listened to the intro to the podcast, I talked about a hypothesis that even though I do believe in truth, I believe in an ultimate truth, I believe that the world is not as black and white as we think it is, and as we hope it is. The more of our situations and experiences actually preside in a gray area. Now, some of the topics we'll be going over, some simple, easy, straightforward topics such as parenting and relationships and church and religion and politics and cultural issues and, more easy stuff like that. And with that chuckle in the background, I do want to introduce you to someone. If you're a listener to the Celebrate Story podcast, we have reversed roles here at the Wagner household.
Oh, yeah.
Where Julie Wagner will be the producer on this podcast.
That's me, the producer that does none of the work.
Right. And then I will be the one tasked with speaking.
Speaking. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Which it's harder than I thought it was going to be. Nobody will ever know this, except that I'm telling you this right now. But this is the second time this is being recorded. I trashed the first recording that I did by myself here in the thing, and I realized I needed a smiling, cheery, supportive face staring back at me.
That's me.
That's
my
Julie.
role.
There it is.
So, okay, I gotta jump in here for a second. It's so nice. Thank you so much for inviting me to be on your podcast. Oh my gosh, it sounds so cheesy and so professional, but I just can't wait for everyone to hear your thoughts on all of this because it's going to be amazing. So, Steve, is there a place where things changed for you? I think, what did you say, back 2016? You had a moment.
Yeah, it was around the election, probably after the election of 2016-17. I think things changed for me. I think they changed for a lot of people at that point. But up to that point, I had a habit. I had a little bit of a problem. It's an older problem that our fathers and mothers had.
You're so sneaky.
It was a radio dial problem. I was listening to a lot of AM radio.
A radio
habit. A radio habit.
I wish there was video on this podcast because you were so proud of your joke.
So I would start in the morning. I would listen to sports talk radio starting at 6, 7 a.m. up until about noon. At noon, I flipped it over to Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, Sean Hannity, Fox News, that sort of thing, and that's just kind of that's where I was at that point. That was my ideology. I mean, if you want to, I was a walking stereotype, I guess. It was a white guy from the South who was a Christian evangelical, Republican, right wing conservative both socially and politically. And that's just where I was. And I would argue with people in that direction. And something about that election changed.
Wait, who did you argue with? You
people.
Are like the least argumentative person that I've ever locked eyes with.
There were people.
There were some. Who did you ever?
Nameless faces, masses on Facebook.
Okay.
Things like that.
Gotcha. Because it's just, you just don't argue.
I was different back then. I've changed.
You were lost and now you're found.
Right. But there was a point where it changed, and it was a specific day. It was a Friday. I was driving up I-77 coming from South Carolina into North Carolina and stopped at the North Carolina line, and Rush Limbaugh was talking to a callers that day, and a lady called in and brought up a topic, and I could hear in his voice, because when you listen to someone long enough, we have it in our relationship, we have it with the kids, I don't know. If one of the kids is lying to me, I know they're lying to me because I see them talk and I see them act. And
you just know their speech patterns. Yeah.
And I've listened to a ton of Rush Limbaugh at this point, and I knew when she asked the question that he had no idea what she was talking about. He didn't have an opinion on it. He'd never thought about whatever she asked at all, ever. It just wasn't there. I could tell in the pause that he took and the beat that he took to respond to her that he just didn't have a solid opinion. But when he did respond, he was sure of himself, and he was speaking his truth into that. I realized that I've never really questioned it. I liked what they had to say at first, I guess, and it just kind of built on me, and it spiraled, and I was just there. All of a sudden, their truth was my truth, and I realized I never questioned that.
So you have quite the reputation for being in the other direction now. So
I think it's been a process. There was a quote I heard, and I can't attribute it to whoever it was because I don't remember who it was, but it said, if you're getting something for free, that you are the product. So, and this is a concept that I'm a sports fan. As I said, I listen to sports talk radio. And if you really boil it down, why does sports exist? I mean, we all love baseball and football and like the actual competition of it, but why does it exist? Why does anybody pay money for it? Why is an Aaron Rodgers quarterback getting $50-60 million a year? It's advertising. It holds you captive for 3 hours to sell you things. Well, Rush Limbaugh, while he was alive, was a very rich man. So is Sean Hannity, Glenn Beck, all those guys. So they're giving me a product every day for free. Why? Well, I think at one point I believed they believed in what they do, and they may very well believe wholeheartedly in the things they're saying, but at the same time they're enriching themselves. So you have to stop, or I had to stop and think, am I being taken advantage of? And this kind of rolls into, social media, and that I think that is the context that I heard that quote to begin with, that Gmail gives you an email address. It costs them a lot of money to host everybody's email address. I recently ran a flag football league or team, and I think 11 of the 12 guys on the team all had Gmail accounts. So they have to house all that information, all the attachments you're sending, all the email, your Google Drive that they give you for free, your pictures, all that kind of stuff. They house that for free. It costs them a lot of money. Why would they spend all that money for you to have an email address? Because they're nice people? No, they're the largest advertising agency in the world. They're selling you things. They want to see your email and who you're sending it to and what hotel you're booking and what flight you're taking, and so that they can better target advertising towards you. Facebook does the same thing. They want you on their site. Facebook wants you to continue to scroll Facebook. So they're going to continue to show you things that they know you like, so that you don't switch over to, they own Instagram. So you don't switch over to TikTok or to Twitter, because over at Twitter and TikTok, they're doing the same thing. The algorithm that's behind the TikToks that you're flipping through are not by accident. I realize this sometimes where I'll see a TikTok or an Instagram reel, their version of TikTok on Instagram, and I'll see something all the time, like a song that's constantly being used. And then I'll go to my 19-year-old son and I'll like sing the song or reference it or something like that, and he'll look at me like I'm crazy. And I realize I'm seeing something all the time because Instagram or TikTok know that I like that. But it doesn't appeal to my 19-year-old son. He's seeing something completely different, and he'll bring up something that he sees all the time, and I have no idea what he's talking about. So this universal app that everybody's using all looks different to everybody. And it's to keep you scrolling and to keep you on their site and to keep gathering information on you so that they can better sell things to you.
And I love what you had shared about the radio show, about they don't have to listen to you. Was it NPR or they don't have to listen to you. It's not that they're listening to you.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that.
No, that was on the Dan Le Batard podcast.
Of course it was.
It was a New York Times reporter on the podcast, and they asked her the question. Her name was Kashmir Hill, I believe is the journalist name. And she researches tech and, social media and how it operates and all that kind of stuff. And they asked her the question. We've all done it. We've all been sitting in a room with 2 or 3 people, and we've had a conversation. Julie and I, summer's coming up, so soon we'll be talking about slip and slides or, inflatable pools or something like that. So we're sitting there, we're talking about slip and slides, and then I go off and I check my email, and all of a sudden at the top of my Gmail, there's an ad for slip and slides. And I'm like, oh my God, my phone's listening to me. And most everybody's done that. They asked her that question. They posed it, and it was like, is everything listening to us? And she was like, well, Siri and Alexa, they're kind of listening because they have to activate when you say their name. But there's not a person on the other side of Siri or Alexa. There's not a person on the other side of your phone who is actively listening to you and then promoting products to you. And she was like, it's actually scarier than that. The algorithms that these companies are using are so intelligent at this point, you don't have to say it. They know what you're thinking before you say it. They know that we have 8 kids and our summer's coming up and that we're going to want a slip and slide. And so they advertise it to us before we even have the opportunity to go on and search Walmart.com for slip and slides.
I know you well enough to know that that doesn't mean you're doing like a diatribe against social media. It really more is a question of like, what can we be certain of? Like we have to continually check how we're getting a feed of what an algorithm knows we want to see. So we have this like confirmation bias. And so what can we be certain about? Yeah.
I guess that was, I think social media can be dangerous. I don't think it's inherently dangerous or evil. I think that we can use it as a tool to promote ourselves, promote podcasts, celebratestorypod.com.
You just promoted my podcast on your podcast.
Hashtag, I don't know. Season 2 upcoming.
You're so cute.
Or, keep in touch with family and friends and people you haven't seen in a long time. But if you're on social media, you can see where it can go awry. So that was kind of a tangent back to, but I guess it ties in because it fits in how I got all the way over into a direction that I didn't really intend to get to. And it's accelerated. That was AM radio. Mm-hmm. And now it's everywhere. But on top of that, I think that we think we're certain more than we actually are. There's things that we do all day long, every day, that we really don't understand how they work. For example, in my hand right now is my cell phone. Okay. I have a computer. I grew up in the 80s, 90s. A computer used to be really big and really expensive, and now more computing power is in my hand than there was back then in a full desktop computer. I don't understand how that happened. I don't understand how have you ever seen a compact disc or a hard drive? It's just a sheet of metal and there's data on it. There's just stuff. You can just access it. It's just there. I don't understand how that works.
Or Wi-Fi.
And Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But they've taken all that thing that used to be in the big box that sat on my desk and miniaturized it and put it into my hand. I don't know how that works, but I trust that it works. I'm certain that it does work, that when I wake up in the morning and my emails will be sitting there and my messages and the weather's there for me and anything else is just there for me. And God forbid if I woke up tomorrow morning and it didn't work, my whole life would just spiral out of control, I think. But we don't know how it works. We're certain that it will work, but we don't know how it works. We don't know how the music gets from the phone into my Bluetooth headphones. And I think that leads me into the next thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit of knowledge can be dangerous. Having that fits in the political talk I was talking about earlier, that I didn't have a good working full knowledge of politics, yet I was completely entrenched in an ideology. There's actually a term for there's a research area that talks about having a little bit of knowledge and having extreme confidence. It's called the Dunning-Kruger effect. For example, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here, let's take a line cook who works at Chili's. And he's a really good line cook, and he's been there for 5, 6, 7 years, who then believes that he's so good that he understands how the whole restaurant works, and he's going to go do it on his own, spend his life savings, and create his own restaurant. Because he had a little bit of knowledge of how that Chili's worked, but he thought he could conquer the restaurant world. Taking it a little further, I remember during I guess it was the Summer Olympics that happened last year due to COVID, that the timings got all messed up. I heard a story that said that 40% of Americans think that they were fit enough to be in the Olympics in either the winter or summer games.
Not win, but just participate.
They could make it to the Olympics. 40%.
That's like 4 out of 10 of our household.
Yes. And you would imagine that most of that percentage were men, because we tend to
women tend to overestimate
what they're capable of. And now most of them were under 35 years old. So I guess that's a little more, makes a little more sense that the younger you are, the more likely you think you can make it to the Olympics. I watch sports. I've been watching sports all my life. I don't truly grasp the concept of how good these people are at what they do. And by this survey, lots of people I think are like that you don't understand the mental aspect of it or the physical aspect that goes into being top at what you do in the world. Just me, I'm 43 years old, and I tried to get a bit of my youth back by joining the flag football team that I referenced earlier. Second game into the year, I reached above my head. That's all I did. I reached above my head and fully extended my arm and made a beautiful,
perfect
one-handed catch. And I brought the ball down. Somebody pulled my flag right away because I have no speed or agility. But as I did that, it felt like my arm exploded inside of itself, which it kind of did. My bicep detached from my elbow, and I had to have surgery to put that back together. But me, who I'm out there and I'm the weekend warrior, and I think I'm, making these one-handed grabs like Odell Beckham Jr. And as I do that, as I fully extend my arm, I break it. I broke myself just trying to catch a football. And maybe, 8 years ago, I might have said that I was one of those people that could, soccer's not that hard. I could get out there in the Summer Olympics and play some soccer. How hard could it be? But, taking that a step further and kind of staying in the surgery side of this, I heard a podcast with Dunning from Dunning-Kruger. I can't remember his first name, but he was talking about, in his research, he saw this in the surgical field. Young surgeons who were doing the residency, they were finding after a few surgeries that they did under supervision from a more qualified surgeon, they would get confidence that they could do any surgeries, that they had confidence well beyond their ability, which is kind of terrifying, knowing that someone just cut into my arm and kind of put it back together, that needs to be done right. That's pretty important. So in that case, having a little bit of confidence, a little bit of knowledge led to having a lot of confidence. Now they find the more experience people get, the less confidence they have. So the more wisdom that they get about whatever the topic, the less confidence they have. But they also said that it then switches back later. As they get more and more experience, then their confidence starts to rise, probably in the fashion that it should. I'm not sure where it's going to fall in the group of episodes that I'm doing, but this was me in my early career, bringing us to Charlotte to start a business. I had a little bit of information.
It was us. Me too.
A little bit of information and a ton of confidence. And we just, how many years later, dug out of the problems that caused for us financially, relationally.
So we're all in this mindset, this Dunning-Kruger effect. We all think we are so much more knowledgeable than we actually are. Like, I can see that in homeschooling. Man, I was so confident those early years, and I think the confidence is coming back, but it's humbling for sure. I think mothering, I mean, I see that in myself for sure, but what is it, just the natural flow of life? Like what's the solution? There's the solution part of me wants a solution.
I don't know. No, that's the answer. I don't know. You need to, I think more and more people, including myself, especially myself, need to say, I don't know. How many times have you gone into a retail store and, let's say a big box retailer like Target, and you're like, where are the candlesticks? And the person looks at you and you can see that look that I kind of saw in Rush Limbaugh's voice. Can you see a look in somebody's voice? And they're like, I think it's aisle 10. Or it's over there. Go down there and make a left. And they don't know.
They're just making it up.
But there's research behind that also. There'll be in an article that I'll post to the show notes here. There's a term called intellectual humility, and we're not showing it. Less and less people are showing intellectual humility. I'll post the article that I'm looking at, but it talks about a postdoctoral researcher named Tanel Porter. One reason why it's so rare for someone to admit when they don't know something is because people are exquisite at knowing when they're being judged and when their competence is being evaluated by others. So if you feel that admitting that you don't know is going to make other people think you're not competent or intelligent, you're much less likely to admit what you don't know. When I hear that, I think it comes down to relationships. How many people have someone in their life that will tell them when they're wrong? Mm. And do we surround ourselves with people in our lives that will tell us we're wrong? Or do we surround ourselves with people in our lives where we can come at them with a hypothesis on something and not be argued with or ridiculed, or open-mindedness is slipping from our relationships. Look around. It really comes down to, I think I mentioned echo chambers a little earlier, but the social media world has created these echo chambers. They're telling you things that you want to see, but we create our own echo chambers. If all of our friends think the same way we do, we've insulated ourselves from other opinions. So anything that we read online, see online, in movies and radio, if people are still listening to radio, besides me, Actually, I don't. Your friends and family that you're surrounding yourself with are just going to validate those thoughts without much question. You've insulated yourself against, I don't know, because everybody around you knows, because everybody thinks the same way you do and you think. So when you have a thought and you tell it to somebody else and they don't question it and come right back to you, you've now validated that thought. So if there's one person that does that, another person, another person, another person, and that's your circle, then there's no reason to think that you're not right, because your whole frame of reference is that's the way everybody thinks.
And people's circles are already getting so much smaller.
Right. I mean, we've isolated ourselves. I mean, that's a whole nother topic, but
I'm just saying it takes a certain number of people to have a diversity of voices.
Right. I mean, we're all so busy. It's hard to even carve out time to have one or two friends that you see on a regular basis versus the village that used to do life with people and raise children together and that sort of thing. It's so hard. Everybody needs to have two jobs, and I don't know. That's a whole nother tangent that can.
I'm just saying it contributes to, if there's less people you're in community with, it's going to be harder to get those smaller amount of people giving you diverse opinions. And I think of how this is where being a people addict pays off for me, because I think back to the post, like right when COVID hit, I did have very real concerns about the safety and efficacy of vaccines. And I do know a lot of people that is their hesitation. And I'm so glad they do that research and share about it. But I'm also so glad I have friends that are pro-vaccine, because I needed to hear pushback. I needed to hear different voices.
Yeah. And I think that's great to hear different voices. But it's so infrequent that happens now, at least in my circles. I mean, I can't speak for everybody. I'm here in the circles that I am, and I try to have diverse opinions in my life. It's hard for someone. The vaccine debate was a classic example that the loud, and it was probably a loud minority, but the loud minority on both sides just drowned out everything. It is a big deal to put some sort of chemical into your body, into your children's body. It shouldn't be taken lightly. There are experts on both sides that believe both ways. And however you decided to go, it's your decision. I mean, it is. You could get into talking about, is it good for the masses? Is it good for... I'm not going into that. You walking into a doctor's office and having them put a needle into your arm with some substance in it is a very personal thing. So to call someone stupid for believing one way or the other isn't helpful. You're not going to change any minds. And I think that's what happened to that debate. Nobody was changing anybody's minds. It got out of hand. So where does that leave us? Oh, well, for today, that leaves us at the end. But really, the end today is just the beginning. I wanted to give a background of where I was, where I am, where I'm headed, and where this podcast is headed. I hope I've done that, and I hope you join me next time. Please, if you would, be so kind as to leave a review, a rating, subscribe to the podcast in Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you are hearing this right now, just to make sure you get the next one as it pops out. I would really appreciate it. And I will put some links to my social media pages, Facebook, Instagram. There's not a lot there, so you dig. Actually, on my Facebook, you might dig back and find some of this stuff back a few years. But haven't been super active on social media. I'm getting a little more active. But I would love to hear if you have any comments, concerns, critiques. I will not argue with you on there, so I'll give you that heads up. Just not something I do, not something I get into. But I would really appreciate any support you guys could give, and I will talk to you next week. Thank you.